Have you ever noticed that being smart or hardworking doesn't always guarantee success? Sometimes the most capable person in the room gets overlooked, while someone else, less skilled but more strategic, moves ahead. Why is that? Because success isn't just about what you know, it's about how people see you, how you influence them, and how you navigate power. The truth is, whether we like it or not, power exists in every interaction. At work, in relationships, in leadership, even in everyday conversations. Some people understand it and quietly use it to their advantage. Others ignore it and end up confused, frustrated, or held back. So the real question is not, do you want power? The real question is, do you understand how it works? And that's exactly what this book explores. In the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene breaks down the hidden patterns behind influence, control, and human behavior. The book explains how power works in human relationships. It's not written as a moral guide, and it doesn't try to tell the reader what is right or wrong. Instead, it presents power as a reality that operates in every environment where people compete for influence, status, recognition, security, or control. According to the book, power is always present. It exists in politics, business, friendship, romance, institutions, and daily interactions. Some people pursue it openly, while others pretend not to care about it. But whether people admit it or not, power affects how they behave. Power affects how they behave. The central idea of the book is that human beings are deeply influenced by pride, insecurity, ambition, fear, envy, desire, and self-interest. Because of that, success doesn't depend only on talent, honesty, or hard work. It also depends on understanding people, reading situations, controlling impressions, and acting strategically. Greene argues that many people fail not because they are incapable, but because they are naive about human nature. They assume that others are straightforward, fair, rational, or generous, when in reality many people are driven by hidden motives. So the book teaches the reader to stop looking at the world as it should be and start looking at it as it is. The book is organized into 48 laws, but these laws aren't random. Together, they form a larger philosophy of power. Some laws are about self-protection. Some are about influence. Some are about deception, emotional control, timing, reputation, or dominance. Some even seem to contradict others, and that is intentional. Greene's point is that power is not mechanical. There is no one formula that always works. Power depends on context. A wise person doesn't blindly follow rules. A wise person studies the situation and chooses the right behavior for the moment. One of the strongest themes in the book is that power depends heavily on perception. In other words, what people think about you often matters more than what is objectively true. A person may be highly capable, but if they appear weak, hesitant, desperate, or awkward, others may dismiss them. On the other hand, someone with less talent may still rise if they project confidence, mystery, and authority. That is why Greene places so much emphasis on image, reputation, and presentation. He argues that reputation is a form of social armor. Once people form an impression of you, that impression shapes how they interpret your actions. A strong reputation can make your path easier. A damaged one can make every move harder. This is why one of the book's recurring lessons is to be careful about how much you reveal. Greene repeatedly advises against excessive openness. He believes that when you show all your thoughts, feelings, and intentions, you make yourself easy to read and easy to control. Mystery, by contrast, creates power. If others can't fully understand your motives, they hesitate. They become cautious. They fill the gaps with their own assumptions. This gives you an advantage. The book therefore values restraint, silence, and concealment. Speaking too much, reacting too quickly, or explaining yourself too openly can reduce your power because it exposes your position. Another major message in the book is that ego is one of the most powerful forces in human behavior. People want to feel important. They want to feel respected, admired, and superior in some way. Greene warns that ignoring this fact is dangerous. One of the clearest examples is the law about never outshining the master. The idea is simple. If someone above you feels overshadowed by your intelligence, charm, competence, or success, they may turn against you, even if you did nothing openly wrong. This is one of the book's harshest but most realistic insights. People don't always reward excellence. Sometimes they punish what makes them feel small. For Greene, survival and advancement often require the ability to manage other people's egos, not just your own performance. This leads to another central principle. Power is often indirect. The book doesn't encourage blunt force unless force is absolutely necessary. Instead, it favors indirection, patience, and strategy. Rather than confronting people head-on, Greene often advises creating situations where they move in the direction you want without realizing they are being guided. Rather than arguing, demonstrate. Rather than chasing, attract. Rather than exposing your hand, keep others uncertain. This indirect style reflects the book's view that open aggression creates resistance, while subtle influence is often more effective. Greene also places great importance on emotional self-control. If perception is one pillar of power, emotional discipline is another. Again and again, the book warns against acting from anger, insecurity, desperation, or wounded pride. Emotional reactions cloud judgment, reveal vulnerability, and make a person predictable. A powerful person, in Greene's view, doesn't lose control in public. They do not rush to respond to insults. They do not let others draw them into unnecessary fights. They remain calm, observe carefully, and act when the timing favors them. The ability to stay composed gives a person psychological advantage because most people are ruled by impulse. Timing itself is another major lesson in the book. Power is not only about what you do, but when you do it. A good move made too early can fail. A strong idea introduced at the wrong moment can be rejected. A confrontation that should have been delayed can destroy progress. Greene believes that powerful people develop a feel for the rhythm of events. They wait, they observe, they sense weakness, opportunity, fatigue, vanity, division, or need. Then they move. In this way, power is linked not only to intelligence, but to patience. The book is also deeply concerned with dependency. Greene argues that one of the surest ways to maintain power is to make others need you. If people can easily replace you, they have little reason to protect or value your position. But if they depend on your skills, your access, your judgment, your network, your knowledge, then your influence becomes harder to challenge. This doesn't mean simply being useful. It means becoming strategically useful in ways that are difficult to duplicate. In the book's worldview, independence sounds admirable, but dependence creates leverage. At the same time, Greene warns readers not to become dependent on others. The book consistently presents dependence as risky because one who needs more usually has less power. This is why it values self-sufficiency, information, and strategic distance. The person who is emotionally needy, financially exposed, socially isolated, or hungry for approval is easier to manipulate. Power belongs to the person who can wait, who can walk away, and who can think clearly without begging for validation. Another important dimension of the book is its treatment of truth and honesty. Greene doesn't reject honesty completely, but he treats it as a tool rather than a moral absolute. He suggests that total honesty can be dangerous in a competitive world because it makes a person transparent. A strategic honesty, however, can be useful. A carefully chosen act of sincerity or generosity can disarm suspicion, win trust, or lower defenses. This reflects the book's broader logic. Almost every virtue can become a strategy, and almost every weakness can become a trap if used without awareness. One of the darker features of the book is its view of manipulation. Greene assumes that the manipulation is already happening in the world, whether people notice it or not. For that reason, he presents the laws partly as defensive knowledge. By understanding how influence works, readers can protect themselves from flattery, emotional bait, false friendship, staged appearances, and power plays disguised as kindness. In that sense, the book can be used in two ways. It can be read offensively, as a manual for gaining influence, or defensively as a guide for recognizing the games other people play. The book pays special attention to reputation because reputation works as a shortcut in the minds of others. Most people do not study reality carefully. They rely on signals. A reputation for competence, unpredictability, toughness and charm, or excellence shapes behavior before any direct interaction even begins. Greene suggests that if your reputation becomes strong enough, people may surrender psychologically before they even challenge you. But because reputation is so powerful, it is also fragile. A single stain, scandal, or repeated sign of weakness can shift how people interpret everything else you do. So, maintaining your image becomes part of maintaining your power. A related theme is the management of attention. Greene understands that invisibility can be dangerous. If nobody notices you, your talent may not matter. The book therefore encourages the reader to stand out, create presence, and avoid being ignored. Attention in this framework is a form of currency, but Greene also knows that attention can backfire if it's controlled. So the challenge is not merely to attract notice, but to shape the kind of notice you attract. One must appear significant, memorable, and hard to dismiss, while avoiding the kind of exposure that invites destruction. The book also takes a realistic, often cynical approach to friendship and loyalty. It warns that friends are not always safer than enemies. Friends may become jealous, entitled, careless, or too familiar. Because they feel close, they may also feel less need to respect boundaries. Former enemies, by contrast, may work harder to prove their loyalty once brought into your circle. Greene doesn't say that friendship is impossible, but he warns against sentimental thinking. His point is that personal closeness does not erase ambition, ego, or self-interest. Power requires that we see people as they are, not as we wish them to be. One of the most repeated messages in the book is the need to master appearances without becoming trapped by them. Greene admires those who can shape perception while keeping their inner intentions hidden. He often praises people from history who knew how to appear generous while calculating, humble while ambitious, peaceful while preparing for conflict, or obedient while quietly expanding their influence. In his telling, successful figures understand theater. They know that public life is performance as much as substance. This doesn't mean that substance is irrelevant, but substance alone is not enough. The world responds to what it sees. Another key idea is that boldness has power. Greene observes that hesitation creates doubt, not only in oneself, but in others. A bold move can intimidate, inspire, or destabilize opponents. Even when boldness is not perfect, it often appears stronger than timid correctness. At the same time, Greene doesn't glorify reckless action. His preferred boldness is calculated. It emerges after observation and preparation. What he criticizes is fearful half-action. When people move without conviction, apologize for their presence, or invite resistance through visible uncertainty. The book frequently warns against overreaching. Many people, once they taste success, become careless. They talk too much, trust too much, reveal too much, or push too far. Greene sees this as one of the most common causes of downfall. Power gained slowly can be lost quickly through arrogance. That is why the book highlights restraint, planning, and awareness of limits. The powerful person is not the one who constantly expands without thought, but the one who knows when to stop, when to consolidate, and when to withdraw. There is also an ongoing tension in the book between adaptability and consistency. On one hand, Greene respects those who are hard to read and difficult to control. On the other hand, he knows that total inconsistency can destroy trust. His solution is strategic flexibility. A person shouldn't become rigid or trapped by their own habits. They should be able to change a style, role, pace, and method depending on the environment. This is another reason the book cannot be reduced to one simple message. It is not saying always dominate or always stay hidden. It is saying that power belongs to the person who reads context accurately and responds in the most effective way. At a deeper level, The 48 Laws of Power is really a book about human under pressure. Greene looks at courts, governments, military leadership, artistic rivalries, and personal conflicts to show that people often behave differently when a status is on the line. They flatter, deceive, attack, ally, betray, perform, withdraw, and manipulate. The book assumes that beneath civilized language, human beings are still highly sensitive to status and control. Much of social life, in Greene's view, is an unspoken contest over who leads, who influences, who defines reality, and who gets used by whom. This is why so many readers find the book unsettling. It strips away comforting illusions. It suggests that goodness alone doesn't protect you, that fairness is not guaranteed, and that many people are more strategic than they appear. But this is also why the book remains powerful. It gives language to experiences many people have already had, but couldn't fully explain. The talented employee who is blocked by insecure leadership. The honest person who is punished for transparency. The generous person who is exploited. The ambitious person who rises by managing appearances better than everyone else. Greene doesn't invent these realities, he organizes them. Despite its hard edge, the book doesn't simply praise cruelty. In many places, it suggests that power is most effective when it's controlled, selective, and intelligent. Recklessness, open sadism, endless conflict, and constant suspicion can destroy the very power one is trying to build. The best strategist, in Greene's framework, is not someone who fights all the time. It is someone who understands when to act, when to wait, when to charm, when to withdraw, when to protect reputation, and when to let others defeat themselves. So the true lesson of the book is not merely manipulate others. It is broader than that. The deeper lesson is understand the rules of the social world before that world uses your innocence against you. Learn to read motives. Learn to protect your image. Learn to manage emotion. Learn to be patient. Learn not to confuse appearances with truth. Learn not to reveal your whole self in environments that reward a strategy over sincerity. And most importantly, learn that power often belongs not to the loudest or strongest person, but to the one who understands people best. In the end, the 48 Laws of Power presents power as a permanent part of life. You can reject it morally, but you cannot escape it socially. Even people who claim to hate power are often influenced by it or reacting to it. Greene's argument is that maturity requires awareness. You don't need to become ruthless, but you do need to become less naive. Because once you understand how power works, you begin to see human behavior more clearly. You notice the games, the patterns, the performances, the insecurities, the ambitions beneath the surface. And that awareness, more than any single law, is the real source of power.